Rodion Raskolnikov, a Russian student, lives in a dilapidated apartment building in St. Petersburg. Starting with vehement hopes for a better future, he now lacks the funds to support himself. His only support was from his relatives residing in the province. He reads the letters sent to him in hopelessness, for they count upon him for his success. He has sold all his valuables to an elderly pawnbroker. Increasingly desperate, he resolves on killing the pawnbroker and robbing her in cold blood. Such cases have come to the interest of a certain criminologist in the name of Walter Reckless in his book of The Crime Problem. In the book, he scrutinized the pervasiveness of delinquency, discussing how and why such things exist. One of his magnum opus is his research that proved to be one of the most influential in the field of criminology, the containment theory. But what is the containment theory? The containment theory attempts to describe the realm of a criminal mind, how a person can gradually become a miscreant, and how such behaviors are reinforced through either external or internal factors. Akin to diseases like malaria, the environment plays a significant factor on its causation. Moreover, it is contended as well that not everyone is prone to malaria due to the massive difference of our genetic immunity. Some might get feeble complications, others might get a severe and life-threatening attacks. But in such cases, malaria can also be controlled by countermeasures. This includes the use of insecticides or of mosquito nets. Likewise, Reckless believed that a criminal mind is affected by factors in its environment and its ability to think and assess for itself. This, in turn, is what the containment theory ultimately describes. The coherence of these two factors, which are the outer and inner, and how it affects the future decision-making of an individual. To delve deeper in this theory, let me first discuss the outer containment. The outer containment is the handmaiden of the norms and expectations. It limits and designates rules for its members, unifying it and prevents deviance from the society. It is the holding power of the group. It contains, steer, shield, divert, support, reinforce, and limit its members. Envision a family setting. The father is expected to provide, the mother to care and administer, the oldest child to guide its siblings. Together, the members fulfill a role which constitute a functioning group, consolidating its identity within the minds of its members. Playing with the idea we have set in stone for the outer containment, let us consider a dichotomy of its prevalence and strength within the group. As previously mentioned, its existence is defined with rules and roles. But let us say that there is an insufficient role for society to give to its members, hence leaving a sector completely directionless. Reckless then pointed out that those with no roles have a tendency to play life by ear, utterly being susceptible to miscreancy. Hence, an individual will therefore have no definite rules and roles to apply itself to. For the concept of belonging to any group simply does not exist in the individual's mind. Changing the tables, let us assume then that the strength of the outer containment is maximized. A paragon of this scenario would be totalitarianism. The government can impose the harshest of laws, and yet there is never a complete conformity for its existence. Certain ethnic groups also have their stern culture imposed on their members. Hutterites boast its almost non-existent crime rate society, having partaking to only 12 crime reports of its 9,000 members, or roughly 1 of every 750 members. Other ethnic groups, such as the Japanese, the Chinese, and the Germans, also have a noticeable behavior as a prerogative to their culture. Postulating these views, how come a totalitarian government is much more ineffective in controlling its members than a generational society? It appears that these values can only be effective if it is supported with a strong inner containment. That being said, let us delve deeper to the realm of the inner containment. The self. The ability of the individual to contain and hold its values is what describes the inner containment. The many components of the inner containment includes its ability to hold a favorable self-image, self-concept, and self-perception. If a person sees himself as reliable, they would likely act to be so. Otherwise, they would deviate from their concept of self if they acted in a contrasting manner. Another component of the inner containment is its ability to give itself a direction or a goal. Long-ranging goals prevents the individual from deviant behaviors that do not complement its objective. But how does the inner containment then function in a society? The inner containment then instigates the individuals to conform to the social norms, the function in which it validates the legitimacy of morals, laws, legislations, and institutions. It is the one responsible for recognizing the values these impositions imply. The greater the alignment of the self-values are with the law, the higher the inner containment will acknowledge the rule imposed within it by the society. Let us set a dichotomy for the strength of the inner containment has on the individual. A high grasp of inner containment on the individual then symbolizes stoicism and indefatigability. In contrast, a weak inner containment thus makes a person extremely vulnerable to altering its beholden principles to the myriads of influences in its surroundings. But what then is its correlation to the outer containment? Let us create a model for the two containers describing its interdependence from one another. Illustrating the view of alternating strength of both containers, suppose that the outer containment is strong and the inner containment is weak. It then proposes the view of tyranny, and so the mind is unwilling to accept its rule, for the mind has little validation for the rules imposed upon it for the utter incoherence of its inner containment. Considering then that the inner containment is strong and the outer containment is weak, the individual can still have a strong sense of control, but then the outer containment in which guides the inner containment is weak. This may result in the misguidance of the strong inner containment to negative behaviors. An example of this is terror organizations, cults, and gang fraternities around the world. The individuals subjugated from these organizations have strong values and self-containment from negative behaviors, since the outer containment, the one who is responsible for external guidance of the individual, is relatively weak. If by then both containers are weak, then the probability of deviancy is also relatively high, for no values from outer or inner containers are sustained. One example of this is the undisturbed village model. Suppose that there is an isolated village in which there is no diversity in its culture. Its inhabitants had never been able to show its tenacity. An example of this is when a naive person is placed outside the world. This could be a child or an overseas worker who does not have experience with the foreign country. Temporarily, the self then would or would not adjust to both containers. Hence, we have a chaotic combination of both outer and inner containments. In conclusion, only by both containers being equally high will reduce deviancy by a significant amount, or if any at all. Now that we have known the respective attributes of both containers and their interdependence from one another, let us then visualize both containers as buffers. In illustrating the inner and outer containers, we can now scrutinize how certain changes can overall affect the grasp on the individual on a minute level. But, for both containers to be affected, we shall add two more variables, namely the social stratosphere and the organic and psychological pushes of an individual. In arranging these variables to a more distinguishable and reasonable form, the circles are to be arranged in a concentric manner. The psychological pushes will serve as the innermost circle, and thus we shall label this the first circle. Then it would be followed by the inner containment. We shall name this the second circle. The third circle will be the outer containment. And finally, the outermost circle will be the social stratosphere, which will serve as the fourth circle. In this illustration, the outer and innermost circles are the only attacking force of the concentric, constantly challenging the individual's inner and outer containers. the outer and inner containment shall have no other function but to react to the constant matter of both first and fourth circles. For demonstration, let us then observe what happens if the incursion occurred on the outermost circle. This could take in a form of poverty, economic insecurity, group conflicts, and inequalities. If the fourth circle is successful in its incursion of the third circle, which is the outer containment, it then degrades the potency and strength of the container, and will continue to batter until to the last line of defense of the individual, which is the second circle. Or, it could be successful in fending off the incursion. If, by then, the third circle has fallen, it will continue to batter its way through the second circle. In this dire situation, it is up to the grit and resolve of the individual's inner containment to resist the constant incursion of the fallen circles. At last, if they have failed to defend its circles, then the individual has fallen into the realm of recidivism. On the contrary, the incursion can occur in the first circle, which is the psychological pushes of the individual. This may be through vehement changes within a person, or some major personality changes. The same process happens with the concentric. The difference lies between the point of the incursion. The inner containment is the first to receive the brunt of the attack. Then, the outer containment is the last to deter its attack. And if both containers fall again, the individual is now within the realm of recidivism. If the individual has already succumbed into delinquency, does it then have a chance to return to righteousness? Changing the tables, let us assume that the individual is a hardline delinquent, thus indicating both the inner and outer containment of the individual is corrupt. The first and fourth circle can still act as the saving grace for both containers, for it can be manipulated by changing the mode of its influence in a more benevolent cause. The same process also happens in the concentric. If the incursion comes from the outermost circle, then the second will face the brunt. Then the third circle will be the last to fall. If the incursion happens in the innermost circle, the same concept repeats.
The containment theory is regarded as the best general theory to describe most delinquent behaviors. Its ability to be expressed to the minute level of criminal profiles for extracting their history and identifying the strength of their containers is unparalleled. This being said, the containment theory is widely used in treatment programs to rehabilitate criminal perpetrators. Such treatment includes the placement of individuals into a more socialized environment to encourage convalescence of the containers of the individuals. Other methods also include prevention. Juveniles are argued to have a susceptible nature and the priority of prevention programs. Consequently, on all operational tests, the containment theory is regarded to be more applicable than its counterpart. Due to these facts, it set a solid foundation in which psychologists, sociologists, and psychiatrists as a basis of agreement.